to the 80-20 Baseball Podcast. Strike! The 80-20 Coaching Masterclass, our weekly get-together where coaches go from new to good and good to great. Mastering the fundamentals and the art of coaching.
Welcome, youth baseball community. Coach Bo here, pumped up to be here with you. Our weekly get-together. Question, do you want more athletic players? Do you want your kid to be more athletic? Do you want your players, your team to be more athletic? Now, of course, that is a rhetorical question. Nobody would say no to more athleticism. Did you know there is a way to get our players to play faster, more freely, with less tension, less tightness? And it has nothing to do with coaching them up on the strength and conditioning, on the agility work, on speed training, plyometrics. All of that stuff is awesome. And if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, you know I'm a very big advocate, borderline huge advocate of physical conditioning insofar as it's appropriate for the age level, right? I'm big on agility work, speed training, body weight exercises, etc. But did you know there's an even faster way to boost our players' athleticism that'll help them play more freely, less tight, more athletically? And that is first being aware of our verbal and non-verbal reactions to our players' mistakes, our kids' mistakes, their errors out there on the field. So by first having the awareness of our verbal reactions, what we say, our critique, especially immediately after the error, and our nonverbal reactions, our disappointed look, our head shaking, throwing our hands in the air like, what the heck? First, being aware of that, and then reducing or ideally eliminating all of those negative reactions to our players' mistakes. Now, of course, this doesn't mean we can't coach them up, but these almost subconscious reactions to players' mistakes, verbal and nonverbal reactions, our players see this and they hear what we're saying. Sometimes they don't listen to our coaching pointers when we're trying to coach them up on their swing, their pitching delivery, how to field a ground ball, base running, etc. But I feel like kids always hear that negative feedback and it sticks a lot longer. And what happens, as I'm sure all of you can relate to this, having likely played sports when you were younger, this leads to tension, tightness, players looking over their shoulder at the coach, worried about what the coach is going to say or thinking or how they're going to react, worried about disappointing you as the coach, the coaching staff. This slows down our players, not just physically, but also mentally. If they're worried about our reaction or what they're going to think, or if they're worried about disappointing us, where are they going to find the brain space to know what to do with the ball, to be thinking one step ahead of the other team? And physically, when it comes to the athleticism, you want to tighten a player up. You want them to play rigid and tense, keep up those negative reactions to their mistakes. I think it's very important to have a poker face as a coach when players make a mistake. I know sometimes we respond to players' errors, physical mistakes, with a positive comment. I recommend just starting by having a poker face. And one way to do this that can help a lot as coaches is to not get stuck on that mistake with our thoughts in our mind. Move on from that. And how do we do that? I love the saying, again, I've mentioned this book many a times, the mental game book called So What Next Pitch. There's always something next, almost immediately, that needs to be looked at, focused on, the next pitch, the next play, the next situation, the next move as a coach. So just move to that. Keep your mind busy on more productive, forward-thinking things, and that'll help move away from that lingering negative reaction. Be aware of our hands up in the air, shaking of our head. There's another move to this, and that is proactively telling players, hey, you're going to make mistakes. Show them videos of the major leaguers that they look up to and idolize, making mistake after mistake. There are plenty of videos on YouTube showing this, bloopers and error videos. Now, I wouldn't show these videos every day or every month, but I think it's good to show at the beginning of a season. So it gives them more of a green light to play faster, smoother, knowing that their idols, their pros, the best in the world, still make mistakes, so they don't need to be perfect. This helps players play free and lose free and easy. So remove or or at a minimum reduce our nonverbal and even verbal negative reactions to mistakes. I think the verbal reactions is probably faster to fix so our players can play faster, smoother, and more confidently. Free and easy. All right. So, of course, agility, speed training, physical athleticism improvements are awesome. I'm a huge fan of that. But what about freeing up their mind so their body can play freely too? So they can play more freely and faster by fixing our reactions to their mistakes. I got great feedback just the other day from a coach that did this, and that was their only focus, and they ended up winning the tournament. All right, now switching gears. I recorded a great interview a few days back, and that interview will be coming out next week. Coach Scott Schwartzbaugh. And Scott is somebody I've gotten to know, and he shares out a ton of wisdom as somebody who's been in the trenches, coaching teams, coaching his 4 kids, and as somebody who now coaches CEOs and vice presidents of companies. So he's moved into the coaching CEOs and vice presidents and leaders of companies, along with coaching a lot of different teams at a lot of different ages over the years. And he has a lot of wisdom. He's passionate about coaching. He's somebody that will share a lot of great wisdom out with all of us. He also played college volleyball in the 80s for UCLA. They won national titles. And in fact, his late father-in-law is one of the most well-known baseball scouts in the Southern California area and one of the most innovative baseball scouts, a scout for the Houston Astros for many years. In fact, you'll hear us talk a little bit about this in the upcoming interview. Scott's father-in-law, the late Doug Deutsch, sat in my apartment on multiple occasions 25 years ago as he went through the pre-draft process of one of my roommates and even drafted my roommate in the 5th round. So Scott will be coming on. We'll probably break it up into weekly bite-sized pieces. So I'll break up that interview into digestible parts each week so you can keep rolling, keep getting better throughout the summer into the fall, and just be crushing it next year as a coach. Now, following up on last week's talk about weighted baseballs, I want to summarize my point from last week. Any kind of arm-specific training that is for velocity or any specific velocity training at the youth baseball level is definitely not recommended, in my opinion, until the pitching delivery has been optimized, lower half strength and lower half stability has been optimized, the arm is properly conditioned and also properly rested, the player's nutrition is closer to healthy than unhealthy, because those tendons, those ligaments, that muscle, that's all made up from the stuff that we eat, the things we consume. So that needs to be, I wouldn't say optimized because that's not realistic, and especially with kids, but kids need to be getting a wide variety of vitamins and nutrients. Speaking of that, in the 80-20 baseball coaching plan, there's a nutrition guide that was completely written by a registered dietitian. Full transparency, as always, my mom wrote that. Now, my mom has been a registered dietitian, which essentially is the highest level of nutrition expertise there is. She's been registered as a dietitian for going on 50 years. In fact, she wrote the diabetic nutrition handbook for Kaiser Hospital. And when I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in 1995, they brought that nutrition guidebook to my room and said, study up. You need to know this stuff before we release you. My mom took one look at it and says, I wrote that. So you can get that nutrition guide, which is a balanced, realistic look at nutrition, and that's included in the coaching plan. So definitely nutrition needs to be optimized. The pitching delivery needs to be optimized. The arm conditioning needs to be optimized. The arm also can't be overused, overtaxed before even considering trying to specifically train up velocity. And by the way, this is very unlikely to happen at the youth level. I'm just saying, to get all those dialed in, I've never met a player that's got all of that dialed in at the youth level. Just be careful looking at these professional training sessions, videos of them doing things. Those are full-grown players that have nothing but time to train. So just be careful chasing that shiny object. And by the way, if you optimize those other things that I've talked about, kids are going to throw harder. And if you haven't optimized a quality long toss routine, which doesn't need to be that complicated, long toss is not very complicated stuff. If you haven't even built up a decent long toss routine, that's another reason to not even mess around with adding heavier balls to the arm training. All right, now for the main topic today, 4 ways to stop a star player or star players from mistreating a lesser talented player. This happens, right? They might tease them, they might make fun of them, and it might be blatant sometimes. When kids think they're better than the other kids, or when they know they're better than the other kids, say at baseball, they often also think they're cooler than the other kids. So here's one way to prevent this or reduce this from happening. Mix in a message early and often that revolves around this core message. Quote, being a great baseball player doesn't make you better than anybody else in life. It doesn't make you a better person. Being good at baseball or being great at baseball means you're great at baseball. It doesn't mean you are or are not great at other things. Being great at baseball or being good at baseball doesn't make you more special than anybody else. Being good or great at baseball doesn't mean you're cooler than anybody else. It just means you're better at baseball. Baseball is one of 1,000 things kids could be good at. This helps bring down kids, sometimes bringing kids back down to earth a little bit, humbling them out, keeps them from thinking they're better than the other kids. So you set the paradigm as the coach. You set the conditions that just because I'm good at X doesn't mean I'm a better person, I'm a cooler person, etc. I think keeping kids humble keeps them thinking that they're above their peers. So that's a good message to instill early on as a message to the entire team, or if you want to single out a kid and talk to them on the side and share that message. All right, another way to help star players from mistreating lesser talented players, I recommend mixing up and rotating their teammates that they are together with during the throwing routine. Mix up their throwing partners. I call it a throwing routine, throwing program. Certain coaches and leagues call it a throwing progression. That routine that happens at the beginning of practice, or at least before you do any drills that involve throwing, I recommend mixing up the teammates. Now here's the caveat. Do not put a kid that just can't catch a baseball with a kid that throws firm or hard. That's a bad recipe. Don't do that. As long as the kid can catch and the other kid is not the hardest thrower in your area code and you feel like it could work from a safety standpoint, mix them up. Don't let good friends just always be together as throwing partners. Partner them up with different teammates. This can help blend the camaraderie. When they start partnering together with different kids, working together, throwing the ball, playing catch together, there's a better sense of togetherness across the group, across the team. So mix up the throwing partners. A third way, require that each kid gives every teammate a high five at the end of each practice, says their name, and says something to the effect of, hey, good job today, or great practice, or good work today. It doesn't need to be a specific thing that they did, like, hey, I really liked that you hit 4 line drives in batting practice. We can't expect kids to remember all that about their teammate. High five, say their name, and good job, great practice, or good work today. High five, say their name, quick compliment. And they need to do it to everybody. This should take no more than 90 seconds. And what I would do while this happens as a coach, I would watch a couple of the cooler kids just to make sure that they give everybody a high five. Typically, the kids that don't feel as cool, they're going to try to get high fives. They're seeking that connection with some of the better kids, the all-star kids, the cooler kids. Just make sure those all-star kids, those cooler kids don't snub the lesser kids. So watch 1 or 2 of those kids, or just pick one of them, make sure that you see them go to every player. And if they don't, you don't need to call them out. Here's what I would do. I would say, all right, not everybody here just high-fived all their teammates. They may say, who, coach, who? Say, hey, I'm not going to say who. You know who you are. I want every single one of you to high five each of your teammates. Now, there are some ways to set up a line so each kid kind of moves through in front of each teammate, kind of a rotated line. So you can do it like that. But teams aren't usually that big. If you have just 10, 11, 12 players at practice, this shouldn't be a problem. So require each kid, give every teammate a quick high five, say their name, and great practice. When the star players have to high five and say something positive to the lesser talented players, this is going to keep them all feeling like they're on the same level. It'll give the perception that they're all on the same level. This gives those kids an opportunity to hear something positive from the kids they may look up to and most likely look up to. This will help them feel more like they're part of the team. Option number 4, to avoid having cliques, especially star players, better players, having their own clique away from the lesser talented players, maybe the, quote, not as cool players. Team get-togethers. Team get-togethers. Like a pool party. The idea of the team get-together is that the kids see each other, especially if they go to different schools, as somebody more than just a baseball player. They see him as a person. Now, ideally, you could do some things at this team get-together, this team party, a team pool party, etc., that could leverage the strengths of those kids that aren't good at baseball but better at other things. Maybe you got some kids that are not good at baseball, but you know they're really good at the guitar. Tell them to bring their guitar and rock out a song for the team. Maybe you got a kid that just strikes out every time at the plate, but he's really good at a video game. Maybe you set up a little video game and he whoops on the all-star baseball kids. This takes a little more thought, but leveraging the strengths of kids that aren't strong at baseball is an ideal way to have a team bonding activity off the field. Hopefully this will give you some ideas at a minimum that you can go out and test out and try with your team to strengthen that team culture. All right, everybody, really try hard to share actionable items here. Next week, we got a great interview with some really actionable advice throughout. In the meantime, head over to 80/20 Baseball, get the coaching plan. Tons of coaches have already got that. The feedback is awesome. Tons of positive feedback on all that. Also, there's the free drill design guide over at 8020baseball.com, and it'll show you the 7 parts to creating optimal drills, ideal drills. And I think by reading that, you'll see that there's just another level to drill design that you rarely see out there. And you'll see that PDF, I think it's 21-page PDF, and it'll be really clear that I love geeking out on drill optimization. Team culture and great training drills, you put those together, that's the winner chicken dinner recipe. You can go read how I break it down, how I look at every drill and how it needs to be designed, and you'll see the very detailed nuances and subtleties that take drills from being average to good and then great, then to elite. So with the coaching plan added to 8020baseball.com, it's really a one-stop shop if you want it to be. Very organized, easy to follow, and it's easy to see what's prioritized, what to use. It takes out the decisions. You just follow along with it and have success. All right, great being here with all of you this week. Send me your emails. Let me know how things are going. Send me your questions. And one more thing before I sign off. Note, if the audio sounds a little different on this, it's because I had to go back and add it because I messed up and didn't wish all of you a great 4th of July. So I hope you all have a great 4th of July. Easily one of my most favorite holidays, celebrations of the year. So I had to come back and plug this message in or I'd be kicking myself. So I hope all of you have a terrific 4th. All right, y'all take care. Until next week, adios.
This has been the 80/20 Baseball Podcast, the 80/20 Baseball Masterclass. We got this. Now, let's take the field.